Hello and welcome to Mac Power Users. My name is Stephen Hackett. I'm joined by my friend and yours, Mr. David Sparks.
Hello, Stephen. How are you today, buddy?
I am much better. Big thanks to our friend Chris Bailey for filling in for me.
Yeah.
I was quite sick. I had no voice. I sent you a voice memo at some point. I was like, no one needs to hear this.
Yeah, that was funny. First, it was weird. I'm like, why is Stephen sending me a voice memo? I'm like, oh, okay, I get it.
I'm not a big voice memo user. I had to find it in my messages, like the list of apps and messages. But yes, after several days of not speaking to anybody and more hot tea and cider than any one man should drink, I am back.
Well, it's funny because Chris came in at the last minute. He did a great job. And thanks again, Chris, for coming in. And we were talking about AI kind of around the episode because Chris is really kind of not into AI. He just wrote his new book. He didn't even use like a grammar checker because he didn't want anyone to accuse him of using AI to write. But since we recorded the episode, he's been texting me. He's discovered AI for what I like to call donkey work, to do like busy work for him. And being on the show has triggered something for Chris, I think. So now we're going to have him back at some point to talk about all the stuff he's doing.
Yeah, no, it was a great episode. I listened to it when it came out on Sunday. And yeah, thank you again, Chris.
Preliminary announcements. I just want to thank everybody for the support with the Productivity Field Guide. It's a weird field guide for me. I admit, it's not one where I'm talking about software. It's about kind of like how to run your life. And I got lots of great email from doing this the last few years, and a bunch of people have come back again to do it and shared it with their friends and family. The Mac Power Users is an audience that I just wanted to thank specifically because I know you guys are there for me, and thank you.
Yeah, I'm glad it went well.
Yeah.
I know that's always, like you said, it's a different one. I know it feels different to launch that thing or launch an update to it. So
it's weird for me to do something yearly because usually I make a field guide and then it's out there until it needs updating, which can be sometimes years at a time. And doing this thing yearly, the reason I'm doing it yearly is because I want this information to get out there and I want people to use it. So it's great. And I just wanted to say thank you, everybody.
Yeah, that's awesome. Today on More Power Users, which is the longer ad-free version of the show we do each and every week, we're going to circle back to something that was in the news a couple weeks ago now, but we're going to really get into like the rumored folding phone and the size, the use case, all that sort of stuff. So for members, stay tuned at the end of the show. We're going to get into that.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
Me too.
Before we get into our feedback episode, we have some news to share.
We do, yeah. So I'm going to get to the point right away, and then we can talk about what's gone into this decision. But after 7 years, I am stepping away from Mac Power Users. So a little bit of background for this decision, and we're going to talk about what comes next. The show's not going anywhere. Don't worry. We got a great plan. But it is the right time to step back a bit from my podcasting output and focus more on the behind the scenes of both the companies I'm involved with, of course, Relay, the podcast network, and then CrossForward with Underscore, where we make Widgetsmith and Pedometer++, etc. Both companies benefit from more of my time and attention. So for example, over the last couple of years, my responsibilities connected with Widgetsmith and our other apps have expanded, and we're growing the team over there. And I need to have more time and attention spent with that team. And likewise, Relay is also in a transition. So we really have pivoted over the last couple of years as a podcast network. As the advertising market has struggled, we've relied on membership more. And actually, the last couple of years, Relay's kind of bottom line has been basically 50-50 between ads and membership. And I need to focus more on the company side of things there as well as we continue to navigate what quite honestly can be a tricky landscape. So that's what I'm going to do. Spend more time behind the scenes. About a month ago, I spoke to David about this initially, and gang, I mean, as you would expect, Sparky has been supportive and understanding. Really, it has been so good and helpful for me to have your support, David. Even though it's tough, right? But MPU is a show that has had several transitions, right? So when you and Katie first started it, it was indie, and then it was on 5x5, and then it joined Relay in 2015. And then I joined the show in January 2019. And when David asked me to join as Katie was leaving, it was a true honor. Like I will forever remember where I was when you called me, like, hey, what do you think about this? And we have worked really hard to make sure that this transition is as smooth as the previous one. So do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean and just first of all, I do want to say, I wish Steven nothing but well with this. I mean, he has some opportunities he needs to pursue for his family first. And I understand Mac Power Users is a show that takes a lot of work. I mean, it's not a normal podcast where you can just kind of show up and talk about the news. When he explained to me that, like, hey, this other stuff is taking a lot more time and I just can't give MPU what it deserves, I got it. But I was sad too, because Steven is a dear friend, and because Mac Power Users is so hard to make, a co-host is not easy. It's getting the right person is not easy because a lot of people just don't want to work that hard. And frankly, a lot of people don't have the skills. So you need someone who can communicate, who's a teacher, who's willing to do the work. And honestly, it needs to be somebody that I can get along with. I'm not into the idea of Mac Power Users being a show where the co-hosts are always at each other's throats. I want it to be a fun experience of listening to the show, learn a few things. I mean, my secret formula for this show, which I'll now share with you, is I just want everybody in the audience to get at least one thing they can use out of every episode. Like, so when I talked to Chris Bailey, and maybe you got something about his new book, or maybe you got something about the way he uses TextEdit, or maybe in his favorite apps and services at the end, one of those resonated with you. But my goal is every episode is to give every person in the audience something useful. And that's a hard goal. And the co-host has to be in there with me. And Steven he's given this thing 110% for 7 straight years. I mean, when you see our outlines and you see, like, especially some of the research Steven has done for the show, it's awesome. And like, so when you were saying you're leaving, I'm like, damn,
Yeah.
you had the skill, the ability, you're someone I liked, and you were willing to do the work. That's like, how do you replace Stephen Hackett? So I went on a little search. Last month, I've been talking to actually quite a few people as this has been kind of evolving. And and there's a lot of good people out there that would have come in to do the job. But ultimately, we have chosen the new co-host, and it's someone that actually even Steven recommended to me.
Mm-hmm.
It's a guy. He's not on the Relay Network. You may or may not have heard of him. His name is Steven Robles. So we're getting another Steven in.
Yeah.
And Steven he used to be a podcaster, I believe, with Apple Insider, and he has done a lot of YouTube lately. He makes a lot of YouTube videos. We'll put his YouTube link in, but he's not coming on the show to talk about being a YouTuber. He's coming on to teach. And I've had a lot of conversation with Steven Robles, and I feel like he's got the right attitude. He's a good teacher. He considers himself a teacher, as I do. He's willing to do the work. I genuinely like the guy. He's fun to be around. And I think he's going to be, a great new chapter for Mac Power Users. And I'm going to really miss you, Stephen Hackett. And I'm going to welcome in Steven Robles with open arms. And I think the show will go on, but we'll miss you.
Yeah, no, that means a lot. And I'm super excited about Steven coming on. I think he is going to be a great fit. I think he's killing it in his YouTube work with, he talks about shortcuts, home automation, like all the stuff that we cover here. And he really does have that spirit of MPU, the way I think about it, the way you think about it. Like we're here to teach and explain, right? It's different from a show that covers news or rumors. And, we'll dabble in that sometimes, but this is a show that we really strive to make content that is useful at the end of the day, and that someone can walk away with an idea or a new part of their workflow or an app to try. And Steven's right in that lane with us. And so I'm super pleased that he's going to be taking over the reins for my part of the show. And I think it's going to be awesome. And I really look forward to being a listener for years and years to come with you.
Well, I'm not going anywhere.
That's right.
I'll tell you that. Let's tell my wife. I think Mac Power Users is kind of like Doctor Who, and I am the Tardis. The Tardis will never leave. But either way, gang, so we've got some big change coming on. Please show us some grace as we figure this out. please open your heart to Steven as he comes on the show, Steven Robles, and give him a chance. You know, it's a big deal. Mac Power Users is now a 17-year-old podcast. Steven Robles himself was a little intimidated about the idea of him coming in and doing this job, but he's going to be great, and let's everybody support him as he comes in. And I look forward to all the great stuff we have coming.
Yeah.
So for the next few episodes, because of this transition, the next episode of Mac Power Users, we're going to be calling that Farewell Steven. It's our send off to Stephen Hackett. So if you have nice thoughts for Steven, please send them in so I can share them on the show. I'm going to be asking Steven some fun questions. It's going to be a fun send off for our buddy Stephen Hackett. Show after that's going to be called Welcome Steven, and we're going to welcome in the new Steven. And we'll be working towards that. Send me thoughts as well. We've got a feedback form at relay.fm/MPU. You can also go to the forums at macpowerusers.com. But get them in quick, gang, because of the recording schedules. There's not a lot of time between the time this show hits the airwaves and we start recording some of these. So please get them in quick, and I look forward to getting them. Those of you that know my email, it's not that hard. If you want to send something that you don't want Stephen Hackett to see, of course, very nice things that you want to say.
Yes, only nice things.
Yeah, please send them to me. And this is not PR work. I just want to say so clearly, I love Stephen Hackett. He's one of my best friends, and I wish him the best with this, and I have no animosity at all about him leaving the show. I feel like he's doing what he needs to do, and all I want is for him to go and be massively successful with whatever he does. I think Steven feels the same way. I don't think he's making this up as a story that he's leaving because he can't stand me. I think we're all both very kind of sad to see to separate this, but you know, at the same time, Steven is not going to the good place. You and I will still have phone calls and we'll still be talking, and you will still be an occasional guest on Mac Power Users.
Yeah.
But it is just a transition, and these happen, and we'll be good.
Yeah. I mean, our initial conversation on the phone is basically exactly what I just said on the show, right? Like, these are the reasons. There's nothing secretive behind the scenes, right? It's not that I'm secretly switching to Linux for 2026. It's just this is a transition that needs to take place. So yeah, I love you too. Thank you so much for the opportunity 7 years ago. I sort of chuckled to myself when you were talking about how Steven kind of felt the weight of the ask. And I was like, yeah, I understand that perfectly. Yeah. MPU, MPU means something, right? Like those 3 letters in our community, I mean, 17 years, like it is at this point, one of a very small handful of shows in our space with that sort of longevity. It's really incredible. It's a testament to what you've done over the years. It's a testament to what you and Katie built together. It's a testament, I hope, to what you and I have done the last 7 years. And I like that Steven felt that. I like that he felt like, oh, this is a serious thing that I need to go think about and talk with my wife about and like make this decision sober-minded. Yeah, it's gonna be hard personally, but I'm also very excited to see where y'all can take it.
Yeah, when I offered the job to Steven Robles, I said, look, this is the part where I'm not going to be fair. I'm looking for a serious commitment. Like, Mac Power Users basically takes about one of my 5 days every week between prep and recording, post-production, all the stuff we do to make an episode. It's about, a good 8 hours a week that I spend on the show. I said, that's what I'm looking for. And, like I said, go talk to your wife, look at your schedule, make sure that you're willing to do that before you get on this train. Anyway, so Steven, I'm sad, but, I'm kind of glad it's out there now. And I'm glad you can move on with your transition as well. And it's all good, gang. But give the new guy a shot. He's going to come in a couple weeks.
Yeah, he's awesome.
Okay, getting back to good old Mac Power Users topics on feedback. Mitch wrote in, I enjoyed the writing episode, but was surprised there was barely a mention of Obsidian. David, are you still using Obsidian? If so, how? And if not, what are you using instead? No plan? I recently got back in Obsidian after 1 year break where I did all my research, note-taking, and writing in DevonThink. Yeah, so, we didn't get into those. I mentioned them, I think, a few times, but they're so much more than just writing apps, and I guess that's why I didn't go so deep. We had a pretty packed outline for that one. But there's a lot of people that use Obsidian or Noteplan as a long form writing tool.
Hmm.
And I think they're both excellent for it because they just write in plain text and you can keep all your research in a lot of ways. Like Scrivener, you can treat Obsidian or NotePlan as kind of like a one size fits all application where you've got your research and your text. The productivity field guide, ironically, the one I was talking about earlier in the case, that started out as a bunch of Obsidian Markdown files. And only at the very end did I move those into pages to format them for the EPUB. So yeah, I've got them in Obsidian. To answer Mitch's question, the answer to am I using Obsidian or NotePlan, the answer is it's complicated. I mean, Obsidian has just been so stable for me over the years, and I love all the plugins, but there's a lot of my labs members that are all in with NotePlan. So I'm running a bunch of NotePlan data too, and I have yet to find a reason not to love NotePlan either. There's differences. NotePlan doesn't have quite as much like outside plugin support, but the developer of NotePlan, as much as I've dealt with the guy, he seems like he's super dedicated to this app. He's keeps adding features like routinely,
Hmm.
like good features, not junk features. It feels to me like you really can't go wrong with either one of those, Mitch. Pick the one that you choose. One of the nice things about No Plan is the native experience is much better on mobile. Like if you do a lot of time on iPad and iPhone, I think No Plan is a better choice. But boy, if you're in on Obsidian, it's hard to argue against that as well. And they are all great apps for writing.
Hmm.
Somebody also wrote in about notes. I didn't get the name. They said, "Why don't you just do all of it in Apple Notes?" You could do that. Strangely, I do some of that because I use the Vision Pro for so much writing.
Hmm.
And nobody wants to write a text editor for Vision Pro for whatever reason.
Yeah, that's a rough market.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we've said this so many times over the years. Like, there's just so many good options in so many categories. We also had questions about like Craft or Notion, and we use Notion for MPU, like for all of our show outlines are in here. But the block style editing that you have in Notion and you have in apps like Craft add some friction, right? The Notion at least is not using like the standard macOS text editing tools. It's kind of its own thing, and that I find frustrating sometimes. Like it's great for, show prep. You can have like databases and all this stuff, right? But if I'm going to write an article, if I'm working on, you're working on a field guide, or like say I do another book one day, like I would not choose something with a block style editor because I just want sort of the most native, most fluid experience. And it's fine for some tasks. It's just not perfect for all tasks, I think, in our thoughts.
Yeah. And that's like another point on the Note Plan versus Obsidian ledger. Note Plan's a native app. So, like, I've learned the Mac native shortcuts to move cursors and lines and everything over the years. And so inbred with me when I go into Obsidian, where they have done a pretty good job of mapping most of that over, but not all of it. And, because it's not a native app, sometimes you just don't get things that you
Mm-hmm.
expect. But yeah, there's a lot of choices out there. And Mitch, thanks for calling me on that. Appreciate it. Yeah, Jennifer wrote in. She wrote me a nice email saying that I'm being too precious about AI writing. She's like, I'm not being fair to people. Like she's like, I get it that you like to write, but what if someone has English as a second language, or someone who just doesn't consider themselves a writer and hates writing, and
Mm-hmm.
why not have AI do it for you? I wrote her back, and what I said is that's great, and I totally agree, and I shouldn't be so hard on AI writing because I think it is useful. But just make sure you take steps to preserve your voice. What I don't want is someone to AI write me and it doesn't sound like them.
Right. Yeah, for sure. And I think the thing that we always say is like double check it, edit it,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Read through it. These LLMs have come a long way in their ability to write coherently, but they still do goofy things, right? They still can sometimes go off the rails. And so always, look back through it. But yeah, to each their own, right? I think that Jennifer's examples are really good and real, right? I think in particular, like, if you're working in a language it's not your native language, like these things could be really useful. And I actually asked my wife about that. So Mary actually went in college. She has an English degree with a focus in ESL education, and
yeah,
she's done a lot of that in her career. And she was like, yeah, like, obviously you want to double check it, and like it compared to, I'm just blindly translating with Google or something. Like, yeah, it probably is a step up from that. But yeah, you got to find where you're comfortable with it, find where it works for you.
I was thinking, like, my daughter, she's an art history teacher, and last year she had to teach art history to a blind student. Like, how do you do that, right? And I helped her write a prompt that would write, like, write 5,000 words about the Mona Lisa, and we wrote the prompt in the way where the AI knew that it was to be read by a blind person. So it wasn't as much about the historical relevance of it, but just like literally, what does it look like?
Mm-hmm.
And she has to teach, I think, something like 183 art pieces a year, because that's what's on the AP test. And my daughter could not have written those essays for 183 pieces of art for one student. There just wasn't enough time in the day. AI writing for her was able to help that student learn this artwork better.
Fascinating.
And the other thing I told Jennifer is, like, if you're going to write with AI, here's a workflow I'd recommend you try. First of all, use dictation or text. I like dictation because it's really good now. But don't just say, make me a letter to the homeowners association, about this thing. Instead, say some specific points you want to make, write to the homeowners association, tell them that, like, I did paint the house and I have, like, give it some specific language, that you want to use in the letter. And then also say, I want you to write it for me, but I want you to preserve my voice. And usually that's enough for her to understand that the things you said are going to end up in the letter. It's not going to be just some random letter. So then it sounds more like you, at least. So I think there's some ways to do this, and we shouldn't be so precious. I get it.
Yeah. So a little bit about Keyboard Maestro. We did an episode on that recently.
Yeah.
And Lily asked, any chance Keyboard Maestro will go to the iPhone and iPad?
Yeah, I was kind of a jerk. I wrote her back, and one word, I said, nope.
Yeah. And, that is really a bummer, but it is, as far, especially as iPad OS has come, right? We've got multitasking and background processing and all this stuff. There's no paradigm in iOS or iPad OS for an app like Keyboard Maestro that's running all the time, that you can interact with all the time. Shortcuts is, I guess, the closest, but it's definitely not the same.
Yeah.
It's a bummer.
I mean, the original sin of, I keep saying that, I should stop saying original sin. But the problem is, when they made the iPhone OS, they didn't put Apple events in. That was a choice. I mean, they could have put Apple events in. Apple events are the little system connectors to actual actions on your computer. It's what drives AppleScript. It's what allows you to do so much automation on your Mac. And because that system doesn't exist, and I don't know, maybe they were in a hurry, or maybe they just didn't want to do it, they never put that in. They're never going to be able to add it at this point, in my opinion. They have no interest in adding it. So you don't have a lot of the underlying gears and levers that Keyboard Maestro has on the Mac to do so much of the stuff it does. So yeah, it's never going to happen.
Yeah.
Which leads to the next question. John said, should I learn shortcuts or Keyboard Maestro? Where do you draw the lines? And I get it. There's a lot of people out there that are listening to us saying, oh, I would like to do more automation, but they don't know which boat to jump on.
Yeah.
Steven, you want to go first on this one?
I mean, I think sort of the ground level question is, what platform do you need this automation to work on, right? If you're an iPad only user, like, well, the question is answered for you. For me, like, I have some stuff in Shortcuts, but I move towards Keyboard Maestro or Automator or AppleScript because the Mac is my tool, right? My iPhone and iPad are much lesser tools sort of in my work. So I think that's a big one. I think the other thing you need to look at is the sort of the integration that whatever tool has with the tools that you're using, right? So something like Shortcuts, for instance, may have access to a lot of things in first-party Apple apps that maybe aren't exposed to something like Keyboard Maestro or Better Touch Tool, right? You drop in any automation tool you want into that sentence. So I think it's platform, and I think it's the apps you want to interact with are sort of the two big gates you got to deal with.
Yeah, I would add on to that I think generally you should probably start with Shortcuts because it's an easier on-ramp.
Yes.
And anything you learn in building shortcuts, you can carry into Keyboard Maestro. Like once you kind of learn how to make a shortcut, Keyboard Maestro works the same, but a little more powerful.
Mm-hmm.
And if you hit something where you hit a wall with shortcuts and you're willing to do it on your Mac, you can probably do it with Keyboard Maestro.
We had several questions about your conflict palettes. The first one cracked me up was, how big are they?
They're big.
They're big.
They're big. I mean, sometimes I run out of vertical space on my screen.
And what screen are you sitting in front of?
An Apple Pro Display XDR.
That's like 2 feet of conflict palettes.
Hear me out. Hear me out. Okay, so what I do, and as I explained on the show, in fact, we even impressed the good doctor, Dr. Drain. What you do with conflict palettes is it's a way to make it easier to remember how to trigger, because you're going to make all these actions in Keyboard Maestro. Mm-hmm. So I've got some key ones. For me, they all are connected to Control Option Command. A couple of them are on the hyper key, but I generally try to keep them on those 3, and then I hit one letter with it. So P is personal, M is MacSparky, N is Notion, S is setups. I've only got like about 7 or 8 of them. There's not that many. But once you hit it, then it just really hits. The MacSparky is the one that blasts through the vertical length of the screen.
Yeah.
But they're all like subcategories. As I explained in that show, as soon as you hit the first letter of your thing, it immediately shrinks down. I have 6 of them related to blog, get me to the dashboard, draft a new post, add this to the OmniFocus list. I've got a bunch of them, but they all start with blog and a dash. So if I just type B, and then like if I want to go to the dashboard, I go B, and then it shrinks down to 6, and then I hit D, and it goes to the dashboard and closes. When you first open it, it can be huge, but so long as you know the first letter of the thing you're searching for, very quickly, it's going to get smaller. And sometimes I get bloat in it because I've been doing it for so long. I have to go through and kind of clean them out. But it's very easy. Like if I want to go to the banking website, I go Option Control Command P, which opens up a palette. Then I hit B and then S for site. And it like puts me exactly on the page I need to do banking. So there's just like a lot of things I do with it this way. And it allows you to make a ton of scripts in Keyboard Maestro that you don't need to remember the keyboard shortcuts for. This is actually all from an accident, honestly. When I was building the Keyboard Maestro field guide, I was like, as you do when you make a course, you like just dig in on all the features, that Peter really intended people to use the conflict palette as a primary navigation palette.
Right. It's there to catch things like if you accidentally assign a macro or a shortcut to more than one macro, right?
Yeah. So I'm not sure I'm doing it right, but I'm doing it right. So so if you want to, really automate your machine, pick a few categories. You could, instead of MacSparky, maybe use W for work, and it really is fast. I'll tell you, it's crazy how fast I can set up for recording a show or getting to my research or whatever I'm doing through those palettes.
I think one thing that when you're looking at a new tool like this, like that may sound really overwhelming to somebody, but I really think whatever tool you settle on or system you settle on, right, it becomes memory in your fingers and in your hands, right? Like you can see the conflict palette, but my guess is the ones that you use the most often, like you're moving as fast as the Apple lets you, right? Because it is a pathway that's been formed. Yeah, I do kind of find it funny because if you read the documentation on the conflict palettes in the Keyboard Maestro wiki, which is just fantastic. Keyboard Maestro has some of the best documentation of any app that we talk about, I think. But it's like, oh, in case you accidentally did this, it's like, well, you can also use it as a feature, right? Which is cool.
Well, there's a whole palette system that you can design palettes, but because of the conflict navigation where you just type a letter, the conflict palette is actually faster than using the main system for this. And to answer your question, I almost never read the conflict palette. I mean, I just know that my screen, that a little vertical window opens up my screen and disappears, but my fingers know where to go to do all my work. It just happens.
Exactly.
Brian wrote in, how long did it take Stephen to transition all snippets to Keyboard Maestro? Brian is not the only person that wrote this question. I think a lot of people are curious about switching over to Keyboard Maestro for snippets. So give us some measurements here, Stephen.
Yeah, so I have about 100. Oh, let's call it 75 snippet expansion macros. I was a huge user of TextExpander, a huge user of it in Keyboard Maestro. It took several hours. I sort of just, kind of chipped away at it over the course of about a week. I would do, because I have mine in groups, which I really recommend for any text expansion software that has groups. It can be very useful to find what you're looking for if you're going to edit something. But also, like, I would just do a group a day. So, like, one day I did my 512 pixels group, which is very similar to yours. Like, it's like stuff blog related. I did like the relay admin stuff one day, all the Mac Power User stuff one day. I just kind of chipped away at it. And then I would disable that group in TextExpander once it was in Keyboard Maestro. So even in that time period where I was in between, everything still worked. Like I used the same shortcuts to expand. And so for my system, I start with a semicolon and then normally a leading letter. So for instance, if you look at any Mac Power Users episode, there's that what I call the boilerplate where it's like, it's like a link to the newsletter and the forums and the YouTube channel. So that is semicolon MP for Mac Power Users and then B for boilerplate. So it's all the Mac Power Users ones are kind of grouped together, semicolon MP. But I just did it piece by piece. It's like any migration, right? It's like if you change, I don't know who would ever do this, but if you were to change task managers or notes apps or something, right? It's like, well, just put on a podcast and just kind of work your way through it.
Yeah, and it allows you to filter them down. I think I've got like 500 TextExpander snippets.
I killed so many. Like there were some in here I was like, I don't even remember why I set this up, right? It's been in there for years.
Yeah.
So I really pared down.
Yeah, and I could probably do that too, but I'm still using TextExpander. I like the quick capture of it. I like the search function, like where it can go and find the one.
Mm-hmm.
I just have enough on my plate right now that this has not been a thing that I've been thinking about. But I think a lot of listeners are thinking about doing it. So thanks for sharing that.
And you mentioned Dr. Drang, but we'll have a link in the show notes. In December, he talked about our Keyboard Maestro episode, and he talks a little bit about his exploration of the conflict palette and what he's doing in Keyboard Maestro. And he's using Typinator, which is yet another text expansion tool, which I've looked at, and it's great. Type It For Me is another one. So he compares some of the stuff. As always, it's a great blog post, so people should go check that out.
Yeah, well, his story was interesting because he did move everything to Keyboard Maestro, but ultimately because of some of the conveniences of a dedicated app, quick capture and creation, he went back, and in his case, he went back to Typinator.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it makes sense, but I think there's a lot of options there. There's really something to be said for having one less app on your Mac, right? If this can work for you. And the other thing I like about what you're doing that is kind of on the back of my mind is I could do more because now I've got the whole power of Keyboard Maestro behind me. When I trigger a snippet, I could have it, do an email search or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
There's certain snippets I think that would actually pair nicely with further action. And that's something that I would like to explore at some point.
Yeah. And it's funny. I use the semicolon as my leading indicator or my leading character because Drang wrote about it like 11 years ago. Before this, mine was kind of all over the place. Sometimes I would like double up the first letter, and then I'm going to put this link in the blog post, and it's gonna make him feel old. I'm sorry, that's not my intention.
Yeah.
But when he wrote this post in 2015, I was like, oh, that's a great starting character. I think maybe at some point I think he was talking about using something else because on the iOS and iPadOS keyboard, semicolon is like hard to get to. But honestly, like I have a handful of text expansions in the built-in Apple system that I want available on my iPhone or iPad. But again, the Mac is where I do my work. Almost all of these are work related, so the semicolon still works fine for me. But yeah, it's just right there.
One tip, I need to verify again because it's been a few years since I did it, but if you take a text with carriage returns in it and you, like in TextEdit, and you copy it and paste it into the fill field of the native text expansion, it will insert them. You can't do it on iOS or iPadOS, at least the last time I tried. It has to be on a Mac. but you can actually put carriage return based text expansion into the native system with copy and paste into the field. So if you're out there and you don't want to use any of these and you just want to use the native one, there's a little bit of extra power there. Daryl wrote in about ejecting drives.
Yes, Daryl did, because we were speaking about this maybe on the previous feedback. I don't know where we talked about this, but
ejection drives always comes up on Mac Power users.
It does. And Daryl's like, "Oh, well, I use Alfred to do this." I've been an Alfred user for, I don't know, 150 years. And I was like, oh, this is a feature that I actually wasn't using in Alfred, but I am now. So there are several options you can enable in the Alfred preferences. You can just type eject, and then you have options for what Alfred will tell the system to eject. So either removable media, things like USB drives, Thunderbolt drives. I almost said CDs. I'm stuck in 2015 with Drang, I guess.
Yeah.
Locally mounted volumes. So those are things like your NAS or another Mac's, drive that maybe you have mounted, or mounts and / volumes, which is basically everything.
Yeah.
And so that's what I have. I set mine to mounts. And so if I'm going to unplug my MacBook Pro from my desk and take it with me, I can invoke Alfred, type eject, everything gets ejected. And because it's the system ejecting, right? Alfred doesn't have the right to do this. It's telling the system to do it.
Yeah, sending a terminal command probably.
Right. If one of those drives is in use, you'll get the Mac OS warning of like, hey, this drive is in use. You should deal with that. Which I think that message could be more useful on the Mac OS's part. But this is great, and it is fast. Like if they're not in use, I mean, they drop off. Because I routinely have 3 volumes mounted. I have my Time Machine drive, and I have 2 volumes from my NAS mounted. Basically, they mount automatically. And, I need to eject those before I walk away with my laptop. So this was a great tip from Daryl, and this is what I'm doing now. It's been awesome.
Every time Alfred comes up, people write in to say, well, how come you're not giving more love to Raycast? And I have mapped Raycast to my control space key. Mm-hmm. But like the problems like this, Alfred always has a solution for. And that's what I need, honestly. The Raycast solves a lot of problems that I don't feel like. The Raycast AI stuff, I feel like I want to address AI in a different place. But I'm still an Alfred fan, and I know me saying that now, I'm going to get even more email about Raycast.
I mean, it's like text editors, right? Like these all have different tools. And like I think Raycast is super interesting.
Yeah, me too.
But Alfred is the one that does more of what I want. And like when we talked about Alfred a couple of years ago, like the ability to build your own custom workflows in Alfred is huge for me. Because I mean, I use Alfred to search all sorts of stuff on the web just with a couple of keystrokes. And so
did you ever install the Alfred link cleaner workflow?
Yes, is that the one where it like gets rid of all the excess stuff at the end of a URL?
Yes.
Game changer if you're a blogger. So yeah, Alfred, go eject those drives safely.
Right there.
Okay, we got a question from Will about what LLM tools that we would recommend. This is this is a much more complicated question than it seems, but do you want to start us off first?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I'd say this is a question that becomes stale, or this answer becomes stale like a day after we publish the episode, because these things are always changing. I initially started exploring AI extensively with ChatGPT, as everybody else. I can tell you, though, I have kind of moved on. I find Claude to be the best for me, and it feels most natural to me the way the discussion goes with the chatbot. When I have worked with it, it has always seems to be kind of leaning towards the stuff I want it to do. My whole take, I mean, and I've said this before on the show, but I think we should be looking at AI to do busy work for us, not to do creative work for us. And I feel like the Claude business model makes a lot of sense in that way. Like Claude Code, and now they have Claude Co-work, which allows you to do things like rename files and like do stuff that would take time that you don't really want to do, and giving yourself more time to go do something fun. It's like there's like an old story about AI. It's like, I'm so glad AI can do art now so I can have more time to do my laundry. That's not what you want. You want it to do the laundry so you can do art. So I feel like Claude is like on that wavelength. The business model makes sense to me. I mean, the company I mean, they're all chasing general intelligence, but I feel like Claude of all of them is trying to come up with good business and personal uses that do the donkey work type stuff that I'm interested in. So Claude is my main one at this point. Gemini is in second place for me. Google has done very good at catching up with ChatGPT. Their art model's great. I don't really generate much artwork with it. Like I gave it a picture of my dad and his brother taken in like 1930. And it was a terrible picture, like one of those old pictures that is overexposed, very yellow. Like it's almost unusable picture. And I gave it to, what's it called? NaNoWriMo. What do they call that?
Nano banana?
Yeah, Nano Banana. It made a beautiful picture out of it. It was like seeing him as a young man, like in that vivid picture, just like hits you in the feels, and sharing it with my family members. So there's some stuff Gemini's doing that's really impressive. But my main AI of choice today is Claude.
Yeah. I started with ChatGPT for research and sort of as an alternative search engine.
Yeah.
And when the news of Apple and Google getting together to have the Gemini models power Apple Intelligence, like, this is a good time to experiment with Gemini. So I've been using it for a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And it's really come a long way. And of course, it's building on not only the Google search index, but also if you have Gmail and other things, like it knows things about you, right? And you can tell it to use those other data sources within Gemini. I will say the thing that I have missed about it, I was doing some stuff in Terminal recently, and I was really kind of banging my head against the wall to get these commands to work. And ChatGPT, it can integrate with a select number of Mac apps, right? Because it is itself a Mac app, and it has that ability, and that was really useful. And Gemini is more or less constrained to the browser, and for me in Safari, it just means a tab in the browser, right? I would think that Gemini would be more useful to some people if it had that sort of integration with other apps.
Yeah.
And I think Claude in particular, like everyone I've talked to or everything I've heard about Claude Code has been impressive, where you can use Claude as like a junior programmer or a programming partner in your development work. I could see a world where that, like, I think these tools will become, some of these tools at least, will become more specialized. And I really think Claude could move that direction, that they really could be like, we're going to be the AI company for development, for developers, or at least in those circles, that's the one everybody gravitates towards. So I just hear that more and more from friends in software development, on podcasts, reading articles. And I think it's very interesting that they've gone that direction a bit harder than some of the others.
Yeah. I would add, Will also asked which one is best for troubleshooting Apple hardware. And Gemini, I think, would be the answer. Google, they indexed the web before there was AI, and Gemini does a good job of that. Will also confirmed he thought Gemini was the best for him for troubleshooting Apple hardware. Another point on this is I didn't mention at all local AI. I think that's my current kind of blind spot. I'm working on it, though. We're going to have content later this year on Mac Power Users about local AI. It's getting good enough.
Mm-hmm.
And, right now there's a lot going on. I'm kind of waiting for Apple to drop some shoes on Siri, but before the end of the year, I think we're going to have a much clearer idea of good workflows for AI. It's very much Wild West right now. I recommend people don't go out and do the latest thing. The MCPs, there's a bunch of model context protocols to connect apps on your Mac. I'm doing some of it as a canary in a coal mine, not as something I'd recommend people do. Some of it's unstable, some of it's insecure. As we record this, there's Claude Bot, which just got turned into Moltbot, which is people buying a Mac Mini and running like a separate AI instance on a separate computer, which again has a ton of security implications, but it's interesting. So there's just a lot going on, and this is very much evolving.
For sure. And we'll have an article by our friend Federico Vitici at Mac Stories about Claude Bot. Now Moltbot, they had to change their name. Yeah. It's the lobster one that, I don't know about you, but on social media, people are freaking out about getting a cheap Mac Mini to play with this on.
Yeah.
But yeah, it does feel like that the tide, we're finally turning the corner for this stuff to be local in a way that's, I think, more useful.
Yeah. And The Mac Mini 4, that makes sense because you're giving it root access. You don't want to run this on your native computer.
No,
It's
don't
kind of
do
like
that.
isolating it. But then it could be 3 months or 3 years from now where everybody's laughing, saying, why did you remember when you went and bought a computer to do this? And now it's all native and it's not I just feel like this is moving really fast.
Okay. Listener Gene wrote in about sign in with Apple. They wrote, you guys said it is not only a safe, but a good option. At that time, we were talking about it on a previous episode. At that time, MLB only had 2 sites using sign in with Apple. I decided to check how many apps I have signed in with Apple now, and they're up to 20, which is pretty great. That's how my usage has been too. It's gone way up. Now I always look for sign in with Apple to click on without going through the long process I used to have to go through back in the day. I actually find it annoying when a site or app doesn't support it. There's usually a sign in with Facebook or Google too, but Gene doesn't want to use those, which I understand. So yeah, this led to a question for me. It's like, well, how actually do you see what you are signing in with Apple? And of course, you can do that through the Apple account / Apple ID system. On the iPhone and iPad, it's in the settings app. There's a sign in with Apple section, and you can see everything that you are using sign in with Apple, which is awesome. You can also do it on the web at account.apple.com. But you can also manage this in a few other places. The Passwords app that Apple ships has a tool where you can stop using sign in with Apple and like migrate it over to a username and password. And then our friends at 1Password also have support for this, where you can see logins. Like, so if you go to log into a website and you have told 1Password, oh, I used a sign-in provider here, it will then offer that to you as a way to remind you that you don't actually have a username and password for this. You're using another type of credentials. It really has gotten to a place where this is really seamless. I, like Gene, use it a lot more than I used to. And it's great because it ties in with the Apple account system. So it's going to want Touch ID or Face ID. And of course, it has the great feature to hide your email address. And so it basically the developer or the website or whoever's on the other end just gets a mumbo jumbo iCloud email account. And then if that email address gets sold or they're sending you junk mail and you can't subscribe, you basically can just turn that email account off in your iCloud email, and then you never hear from them again. It's very well thought through, and you see it more and more. I feel like I see it in a lot of new apps now.
How often do you give them your actual email versus the generated email?
I generally, with sign in Apple, I will usually give them a fake email, and then I can go in there and turn it off, which I don't think I've ever actually had to do, but it's nice to have the option.
Yeah, I feel like, prove otherwise.
Yeah.
Ed wrote in, I wanted to follow up on your recent episode on focus modes. Not sure if I remember you covering this scenario, but one thing that took me a bit to find is wrangling notifications on shortcuts that run. They constantly put a notification on my lock screen or alert when run, and ends up cluttering noise made that's hard to find the actual notification I was interested in. So yeah, shortcuts, when it runs automatically by default, gives you a notification. That's a security thing that Apple had. There was a time when Apple would not let you have them run automatically at all. And when they finally agreed to do it, they added a little flag for each shortcut called notify when run. And that's turned on by default.
Yeah.
I always turn it off. I mean,
Same.
because it is so annoying to see these things Ed discovered. And he was just pointing out, yeah, go into the individual shortcuts and you can do, and if he turns them all off, he's less likely to click the clear all button and miss something he needs. But when you're doing automation with shortcuts, I feel like the part of the build process for me is to always go in and turn that off. I mean, if I made it, I don't need to be reminded that it's running.
Yeah, I agree. That's how I operate too. I see why it's the default.
Yeah, I agree.
I would like, if I could make a suggestion to the shortcuts team, I know you're all listening, I would like that to be a top level setting in shortcuts of like, hey, any new ones I create, turn the notification off. I don't think I'm going to get that.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I forget, right? And then like, wait, why is this bugging me? But I am glad there is an option for that. If I remember correctly, there used to not be. I think that got added at some point.
Yeah,
but,
I think it was like over a couple of years. It was like you were originally always getting them. And my guess is the shortcut team doesn't want to send you notifications either. somebody there's somebody who does a security review of all this stuff who probably said, no, you have to do this,
Yeah.
and that's that.
Yeah. But yeah, that's a good question. Good scenario. I think a lot of people find themselves in.
All right, we got some speedrun questions. You want to go through them?
Yes. Let's see how good we are at answering questions quickly.
Okay.
Raj asks, how do you decide when a workflow is, quote, good enough versus when to keep refining it?
When I don't think about it anymore,
Same.
Just, or, when it breaks occasionally, then it's not good enough anymore. One other element on that would be sometimes it works so good that I want it to do something more. Like I'm like, oh, this is great. Now do this.
Yeah. Yeah, when I stop thinking about it, when I go to use it, right, it's just completely ingrained, then I feel pretty good about that when it's just part of the background of what I'm doing.
Emily says, what's your strategy for keeping up with app updates without getting distracted by every new feature?
I generally rely on coverage of apps to sort of know, like, if an app I'm using or I'm interested in has a big update coming. But also, I am in the position, I think you are too, David, I just get a bunch of press releases about apps all the time. So sometimes I know in advance. This is a little bit weird because most apps will auto update through the App Store. That's how most people do that. A lot of developers write really bad App Store release notes. So even if there is something you knew to look for it, they may not tell you. So I tend to look elsewhere.
Yeah. Steve and I are in a unique position where we see the news of all this stuff coming across. But I'll tell you that the ones I make note of are like 1 in 20. Like a lot of my apps get updates and I see that they did, I don't care. But when I see that they did something really interesting, then I'll make a point of going and learning the new feature, maybe even covering it. And that's a very small hit rate.
For sure. Marcus asks, what's one Mac app that you've recently stopped using and why?
I realized recently I have stopped using all photo modification apps except Pixelmator Pro.
Okay.
Just slowly over the last couple of years, I've got so good at Pixelmator Pro that, I love Acorn, Gus Mueller, and some of these other folks making great apps. I don't even look at them anymore. I just do it in Pixelmator Pro.
For me, it is Bartender, which we've talked about. They've had some sort of ups and downs over the last couple of years, but I decided to take a tour of some of the other apps in this space, and I settled on one called Ice. It is currently, I'm running the dev beta because they've had some issues on Tahoe, but basically it's a rebuilt version of Bartender that's free and open source. The reason I like it over something like Vanilla, which is really clean, but Ice can do that secondary menu bar, and on a laptop with a notch, that's really the whole goal, right? It's like if I need these other things, then I want them lower so they clear the notch. I don't run it when I'm at my desk on my display, but if I'm on the laptop, I launch it, and it's been great.
Yeah, I need to look at this seriously. Bartender just released version 6. So they've got a new version. And, to the question earlier, this is the kind of thing that I kind of want to go look into. I want to see, what are we getting with Bartender 6? It's part of Setup, I believe. So I don't, I get it as part of my Setup subscription. So I just want to see what's going on, and I actually need to look at both of these. I definitely am not on the, let's all hate Bartender bandwagon that seemed like existed for a little while when they sold the app to a new person. They didn't do a great job of the transition, but I don't think there was any bad faith there. I think they're good people that want to make a good app. So I have an open mind to Bartender, and I see they have a new version, so I'm going to be checking that out. But yeah, that's interesting. Well, I didn't do a good job of making that a quick answer, did I? Sorry.
I didn't think we were going to be great at it, but
yeah.
I'll try it.
Yeah.
Oh, man. All right.
So much for lightning.
It's fine. It's fine.
Rolling thunder. How about
that? Sounds cooler anyways.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, what about some stuff we're playing with?
Okay, so we've been dancing around this, but Claude released a new feature called Cowork. And I've done a labs video on it. We had a labs meetup on it. This is really impressive. The thing where you want to rename files, something I've been chasing on Mac Power Users for 17 years. So I gave Claude Cowork access to a folder, just one folder, that I had a bunch of scans in that I had scanned with Greg Pierce's Simple Scan app. So they all had just the name scan and date.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, Claude, go in and read the first page of each PDF. Find the actual date of the document, not the date it was scanned, but the date of the document, and find out what the document's about, and rename it with the date of the document and the subject of the document.
Mm-hmm.
And it went through and renamed like 30 files, and it had the actual date from inside the document and the name of the document. Now, it's very beta now, and not everybody, you have to have a paid account to get access to it, and they're still, I think they even call it beta in their release. It's very early days, but this is super powerful. Just think about it. One of my labs members pointed it at a folder of years of documents, and it went through and renamed them all. So this is really powerful. The other thing Cowork can do, and it can work with a local store of text files very easily. Like the document thing, you've got to like be careful because it runs out of memory. You've got to like say just do one at a time, and you've really got to polish it up. But like I said, in a few months, this is going to be easy. The local text file thing is I pointed it at both my Obsidian and NotePlan vaults, and it was just so nice. Like I've got a text file that's full of ideas for future labs videos. You know, I've been building it for a couple of years, so it's huge. And I said, go through that file and nominate 20 entries, because there's probably like 200 entries in it. Like nominate 20 entries for deletion and tell me why. Mm-hmm. And it found a bunch like that were about old versions of the OS or apps that, you know, aren't even really active now, like things I'd written down 2 years ago that would make no sense to make a video on that. I said, okay, go ahead and delete those. So it deleted those for me. And then I did that a couple times. I ended up eliminating like 50 items from the list. And then I said, okay, go through and fix any typos in the list. Because when I write these things down, you know, I'm just typing fast. The capitalization's weird. And it said, okay, do you want them in title case? I said, yes, please put them in title case. You know, put the link on a separate line. It went through and reordered. I said, okay, now sort them by subject matter. And it went through and it said, okay, here's all the things about AI that you may want to cover. Here's all the things about iPhone. Here's all the things about, you know, it went through and categorized them for me. I said, okay, now pick 5 that you think I should do right away, you know? And like 2 of them were useful. The other 2 weren't right away. It was wrong about them. It was doing this on a text file on my device the whole time. So the file kept updating to match what I was asking it to do. And that's the kind of personal assistance stuff that I want from AI. And it exists now in Claude with Claude Cowork. And what Claude Cowork really is just a jumped up version of Claude Code. You know, what they realized is people were using Claude Code to write terminal, you know, routines to go through and do stuff like this. And by making it in Claude Cowork, they kind of simplified it for humans that are not programmers. And in the background, it's still doing all the terminal stuff, but you're talking to it just kind of in generic terms. But I'm hearing from so many labs members that are jumping on this and making like real progress in getting busy work done for them. And it's kind of crazy to think about. Give it a folder full of 300 documents and just walk away from your computer and they're all renamed for you. That's a big deal.
Cool. Yeah, super cool. They call it a research preview. It's like somehow even less or more beta than beta.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is kind of what I was referring to with ChatGPT versus Gemini, right? Gemini is a web tool, basically. Yeah. And Claude Cowork is even beyond, I think, what ChatGPT can do in terms of like, it is actually working with your local files in a way that is, you know, you're not uploading and downloading things, right? If you have a question about a PDF or an image, you have to upload it to these other tools. So yeah, it's very interesting how these companies continue to develop different things. And I've heard, like Claude Code, I've heard only basically good things about Claude Cowork for those people using it. So super interesting.
And there's risks to this, right? You're giving it write access to your drive. What if it had gone through and just deleted all of my ideas?
Yeah, that'd be bad.
And of course, I've got Time Machine backups, and I would be able to recover it. But I do think that Obsidian and NotePlan users should really pay attention to this, because working with text files is like the lowest level lift you can do with this. It's very easy. Whereas if you're working with like an Apple Notes database, I think there's a much higher risk that it's going to break. It's really cool though, and it's continuing to evolve. I mean, this is as bad as it's ever going to be.
Exactly. So for me, on a recent episode, you spoke about the use case of 2 task apps, right? Like maybe you're using OmniFocus for work and reminders for personal and family stuff. I've never done that successfully. I've tried it a couple of times over the
Yeah.
years, but I was like, well, maybe this is the time. So
Okay.
I have been using Things for all like my cross-forward work for about 3 weeks now. Boy, Things is just as beautiful as I remember. Things is one of those apps that like I check out every few years. My fundamental problem with Things has never changed. It's that I think their repeating task system is bonkers the way you set it up. And they don't have in my mind, like they basically work on like start dates much more than like deadline dates, and that's kind of the backwards of the way that I personally work. So it's not a great fit for everything I do, but so far it's been enough for my tasks over at CrossForward. I don't have a ton of repeating stuff there, unlike Relay and unlike my podcast, where like basically everything happens on a weekly or monthly cycle. So it's great. It's beautiful. The sync is really solid. I remember years and years and years ago when they built their own sync system, people were like, "What are you doing?" It's been great. I dumped a bunch of stuff into it on the Mac, and then I installed it on my phone and opened it and signed in, and it was like it was all there. So it's been interesting to have things across to task managers. I'm not sure it's going to stick, not because of Things, but that still is a weird concept to me. But I'm giving it a shot because there are upsides to it, right? Like Relay and podcast stuff is still in reminders with everything else, but like it means that if I'm not working on with David Smith that day, or it's like, well, I can just close this and not see any of it, which is compelling. Or a lot of, because CrossForward is very asynchronous work. Sometimes I got things hanging out in there that I'm waiting for somebody else. Like it's just still on my list. And that would be, it kind of was junking up reminders with some other things. And so I'm going to keep experimenting with this. It is a very interesting concept to me. And really, it's forced upon a lot of people, right? Like if you work for an organization that uses 365 and you need a to-do list, well, you're using Outlook or Microsoft To Do, which I think is basically like the Outlook task system, kind of in a standalone app. A lot of companies won't let you put company to-do list things in your own apps, right? By policy or by actual technology limitations. And so a lot of people do live in this world where they have things divided up a bit more. You're looking at more than one place, right, to get an overview of your day or your week, which is a little bit challenging, but I'm going to keep experimenting with it, keep pushing it, and see where it ends up.
The app, like, you're saying Things is kind of almost an aspirational app for you. You want to use it because it's so great. An app for that, like that for me, is Trello. I just think Trello is so cool. Every time I play with it, there's a part of me that just wants to dump everything into Trello boards and just run everything off those boards. And I know that you could kind of have a Kanban feature in reminders. I know that, OmniFocus has got one coming. But the Trello is just like built for that. There's part of me that just wants to just say heck with it and put everything in there.
Mm-hmm.
But then also, like, as I see the rapid escalation with these kind of AI assistant tools, I just think that all this stuff is up in the air right now.
Yeah, I think so too. And there's a good use case for something like Trello, right? I mean, even Todoist has that sort of, and reminders, they've sort of done some of that Kanban view stuff.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone does it as good as Trello. And Trello is great. I really use it like for big projects. So like for the St. Jude campaign every year, I've got one.
Yeah.
Because that thing has a million moving parts. And, some of those things become actual tasks.
Yeah.
But I'm also using it to sort of keep up with other people's parts of the project.
Yeah.
And
you may find that useful with the work you're doing now with David, because you're going to be managing people, and that would be a good tool for it.
Yeah. I'm actually building some of that stuff actually in Notion for CrossForward, and it's been really interesting to really push it. For MPU, right, like we've got a big database of all of our episodes. We have databases for archives and sponsors. Like it's all these sort of pieces of data, but we don't do a lot of like cross-pollination between them. So I'm really playing with that for the first time in Notion now, and it's got some really cool tricks up its sleeve, but you got to kind of figure it out. You're talking about learning curve and Keyboard Maestro. Notion, I think, also has a learning curve that some people find a bit tricky.
All right. Well, there we go. Another feedback episode from the Mac Power users. For additional feedback and membership, go to relay.fm/MPU. We'd love to have you join as a More Power Users member. As Steven said, that's a big way we keep the lights on here, so we really do appreciate it. Thanks also to our sponsor, Squarespace and Ecamm. And for you More Power users, stick around. We're going to be talking about the new folding iPhone. And otherwise, we'll see you next time.